Andrew Cuomo, just to follow up on my previous coverage of that, I think I called like the fall from grace. He officially resigned as the 56th governor of the state of New York after serving for a decade between 2011 and 2021. He gave his 2 weeks notice on August 10th, 2021, and this was after the independent investigation by Letitia James, which is the New York Attorney General, and her office. And the fact that they found that Cuomo sexually harassed 11 women, including state employees. The women alleged that he made sexual comments and groped them and tried kissing them without their consent, inappropriately touched them, etc. Her office put out a report that's 168 pages long, which I will link to in the episode notes if anybody wants to check it out. And the report outlines their review of thousands of documents, emails, text messages, pictures, sworn testimonies from not just the alleged victims, but folks within the Cuomo administration, Cuomo himself. His fellow Democrats in the state Senate, state assembly, were already beginning the plans to impeach him. And with that, he still maintained his innocence. According to him, from his perspective, in his mind, he didn't do anything wrong. He didn't cross any lines. But he thought the right and noble, quote unquote, thing to do would be to step aside so that the state can go on with state business and not be sidelined by this massive type of sideshow. Which, by the way, he's still facing criminal investigations related to those harassment claims. Here's a quote from Letitia James, which is taken from one of the news articles that I will link to in the episode notes in case you guys want to check it out. And she said, quote, "This is a sad day for New York because independent investigators have concluded that Governor Cuomo sexually harassed multiple women and, in doing so, broke the law," end quote. Then the article goes on to say that James's office questioned 179 people and reviewed over 74,000 documents in the months-long probe, which again resulted in the 168-page report, which I will also, as stated before, link to in the episode notes for you guys to check out. Now, that's a lot of fucking smoke. You know what they say, where there's smoke, there's fire. So I wonder if his actual, because he's maintained his innocence the entire time, and, even, leading up to the report being published, and I think even days after it being published, like, he was like, I'm going to fight this, et cetera, et cetera. But I wonder if it got to a point of, all right, you're going to face criminal charges, you could probably go to jail, et cetera, if part of him resigning was in fact throwing in some sort of, behind the scenes deal of, okay, I'm not going to do jail time, so I'll step down, or I'll just do a house arrest or something like that. I don't know. Again, that's like me speculating. I'm not sure how that would work, but I'm doubtful of it just being like an altruistic, I'm going to step aside so the state could continue to do state's business type of thing. What's interesting to me, and I've touched on this before, and I think it says more about us as a society than anything else, is that and having such a large fall from grace, where he goes from being so monumental throughout the COVID crisis in terms of just his leadership and being on TV and kind of being that sturdy rock that a lot of us in the country were looking for during the beginning times of COVID and all the uncertainty and stuff like that, and kind of being a steady voice of reason, to the point that folks were kind of sort of hoping that there was a way to swap him in to run against Trump for president instead of Biden. For him to go from that to resigning as governor took this sex scandal, and where the nursing home death cover-up, which is still being investigated by the FBI, by the way, which is just a whole separate thing, that didn't do it. Again, I think it's a testament of, says more about society nowadays than anything else. And that is in no way meant to disparage what the 11 women that accuse Cuomo of doing the things that he did, that were again corroborated by the Attorney General's reporting and investigation. But it is meant to highlight how oddly interesting it is that the Cuomo administration policies around COVID last spring forced nursing homes to take back residents that had been hospitalized for COVID. Once they began recovery, he forced nursing homes to take them back. And that caused the COVID virus to spread like wildfire within nursing homes. And then the cover-up that ensued by his administration of covering up the death toll by more than half. I think it was like by 2/3, which again is still being investigated by the FBI. The cover-up of something like 9,000 deaths. But the sex scandal is what does it. I don't know. And he could have warranted an Emmy by whatever metrics it is that you give Emmys out for, while also covering up policies that resulted in the deaths of thousands. You taking away his Emmy doesn't take away the fact that that cover-up and those alleged sexual harassments happened. That literally does nothing. It's like such clear, transparent, just like virtue signaling, which is gross in and of itself. But it doesn't change anything. Like, the fact that he was that like sturdy rock that folks, including myself, wanted him to like run for president instead of Biden, like that happened regardless. But this other atrocious nursing home scandal cover-up thing also happened. The alleged sexual harassment also happened. Like, two things can be true at the same time. You guys do understand that, right? It's just this retroactive cancel culture, clear virtue signaling bullshit that is just like, ugh, it's fucking gross in and of itself. That whole movement, that whole concept, that whole idea. You guys really have to stop that shit, man. You can't whitewash history. And you also have to realize that more than one thing can be true simultaneously. They're not mutually exclusive things. One thing doesn't outdo the other. He could have been the rock and source of stability that millions of people needed and were looking for during the pandemic, while also sexually harassing women at the same time. But I digress. On the flip side, on a lighter note, Kathy Hochul, who was the lieutenant governor, has now become the first female governor of the state of New York. The lieutenant governor, similar to the vice president on the federal level, the lieutenant governor is a ceremonial type of role that does step in for the actual president, or in this case, the governor. Should something happen to the governor, presides as like the tie-breaking vote for like the state Senate, just like the vice president does for the United States Senate. But besides that, is a largely ceremonial role. They had by both accounts, both on previous Governor Cuomo's and current Governor Kathy Hochul's tellings of it, they had a open and clear transition between the teams. And me, as a New Yorker, am definitely rooting for Kathy Hochul, hoping that she's able to excel at leading the state. And I'm definitely interested in seeing how it unfolds. She has to continue through like what would have been Cuomo's term, which would have ended in 2022, where he could have ran for re-election, obviously. That's the term that she has to fulfill now. So from now until 2022, when she would be up for re-election, if she chooses to run at that time. So I'm definitely interested to see how that plays out in the handful of press conferences that I've seen her in since everything started going down. She definitely seems up for it and more than willing and able to handle the task at hand.